The defending world champions and the most storied organization in LoL Esports is back at an international event to the surprise of absolutely nobody. Well, they got a scare from a surprising upset in the upper bracket of playoffs from Hanwha Life Esports. Let's be honest with ourselves. The LCK this year was always going to be a two-horse race between T1 and Gen G. A race that T1 ran quite well. After a 15-3 regular season, a dismantling of D plus Kia in the lower bracket, and getting vengeance on Zeka for 2022, and reminding Viper he isn't allowed to have nice things, T1 took Gen G to 5 games in what is widely considered to be one of the best LCK finals in years. It truly was a heavyweight fight, and taking a team that's considered at minimum a top 2 team in the world the distance is very commendable. All 5 players from that World Championship roster are back. The play-in stage is a formality. T1 are getting out with no difficulty. The real question is what they'll do in the bracket stage. T1 as a team are defined by unpredictability and their clutch factor. Keria in particular is unafraid to pick weird champions, and they're willing to play both strong top lane matchups and bot side matchups at the same time. They can run you over in the early game, or come back from a deficit with strong team fighting. With their varied champ pools and pool of international experience, T1 is very much in contention to win the whole thing. The question is, which version of T1 are we getting? Are we getting peak 2023 T1, where Faker has plot armor against the LPL and Guma UC rips through teams like wet tissue paper? Or are we getting a more immortal T1 like we've seen recently, where Zeus is consistently dying isolated and Keria is struggling on traditional support picks? Either way, this is a team that's comfortably above every minor region team, Western team, and should beat top esports more times than not. And they can match well into Gen G and BLG. While they aren't the favorites, only a fool or a hater would ever count T1 out of an international tournament completely. After a ton of shuffling around in the offseason, the question of who was going to stand alongside BLG, inevitably, at the top of the LPL was an interesting one that was up in the air. Would Weibo build off their World's Finals appearance? How about LNG with a 1-2 punch of Scout and Gala? Or maybe JDG will make their grand return as Kanabi and Yagao are reunited once more. But when all was said and done and the dust was settled, Top Esports were the team that clawed their way to the silver medal. Coming off a loss to Weibo in the Regional Gauntlet of 2023, and their most recent international appearance in 2022 being one they and every LPL fan would very much like it if we forgot about, it was very clear Top needed to make some changes. They swung for the fences in the offseason and they hit a home run. Cream makes his international debut after a solid year on an OMG roster, all Forevermore didn't make an international event, but the true stars of the show were their additions in top and support. 369 is not only just as good as he was last year, he finally gets to play carries after being restricted to mostly weak side on JDG. In a year where bot lane seems to be the most invested in carry, Top are one of the few teams left willing to heavily invest in the top lane to win a game. And Jackie Love finally gets to play with an all-star support after so many years. While I will never get used to not seeing Mako in an Edward Gaming uniform, he has been freed from the shackles of an incredibly mediocre roster in 2023 that proceeded to crash and burn spectacularly in his absence, as he returns to glories not seen since his World Championship run in 2021. They popped off, exceeding all expectations with a 13-3 regular season, taking BLG to 5 games in the upper bracket and utterly dominating their closest competition for the second seed in JD Gaming, with a 3-0 sweep in the upper bracket finals and a 3-1 victory in the lower bracket. For their expectations, Top Esports are in a strange sort of purgatory. Play-in should be a non-factor. They should easily get out of it, and they should easily beat the Western first seeds when they get into the bracket stage. The top 4 finish should not even be a question, but it will also be a lot harder for them to place any higher than 4th place. This mostly comes down to their specific strengths and weaknesses. Top Esports' greatest strengths are their top and bot lanes. While 369 is genuinely spectacular and probably the best top laner of the tournament, but is where the issues start to show. I definitely favor Jackie Love and Mako over Gen G's duo, but they've been shown to be consistently worse than Elk and On. That's why they lost the finals as hard as they did. Their greatest strength was simply outclassed. As for their weaknesses, Cream has no international experience to speak of, but my biggest concern is the jungler. Tian is a skilled jungler with a very high skill ceiling, proven talent, and is an integral part of Top's victories. This is a fact. He is also the only jungler out of the 4 favorites who will flat out lose you a game on his lonesome when he's off form. Between the 5 straight finals losses and the 2 straight collapses in World's group stage, Tian has received a not entirely undeserved reputation of falling apart in the clutch. Top has a lot of doubters given their history and consistency, but they are far from a bad team and could even beat the top 3 if everything breaks right. How far they go will be up to them. After a disappointing end to 2023, FlyQuest shifted gears in roster building philosophy. They stopped importing Koreans and switched to importing Europeans. A strong topside of Bwipo inspired in Jensen, backed up by a young native duo in Masa and Busia, led Fly to glories they weren't expecting. They dismantled the Cloud9 super team before falling to Team Liquid in an upset in the finals. While Fly has a significant amount of experience and proven talent that should carry them through the playing stage quite easily, their straightforward game plans and static ceilings will make it difficult for them to punch above their weight class. While they should make it out of the play-ins, anything more than that is a tough ask. Fnatic ran back all but one member of last year's roster. Even though June was a relative unknown coming into the year, the LEC in 2024 was expected to be a two-horse race between them and G2. While this didn't quite pan out in winter thanks to Mad Lion surprising everyone, in spring, Fnatic took their rightful place as the eternal silver medalists of Europe. It took a reverse sweep of BDS to get here, but Fnatic are back at their first MSI since 2018. Having a strong mid-jungle duo in Humanoid and Razork should guarantee that they get out of play-ins, but if Oscarden and Noah step up, perhaps they'll even steal a game or two from the big names. A breakout performance from this Fnatic core could solidify them as a group that sticks around for the long term. In a tournament filled with teams that are no stranger to the biggest stage, the PCS is sending yet another familiar face. PSG Talent have only missed one international event in their 4-year existence. But despite their name brand and reloading by adding another PCS legend in Betty, their road was anything but easy. They had to run the gauntlet, essentially playing a mini MSI to even get here thanks to the region mergers. There was some steep competition with the Flying Oysters building a super team around Gory, Karza, and Sword and the LJL first seed of all teams taking them to 5 games in round 2. While SoftBank Hawks, led by Evie, made a miracle run through the lower bracket, PSG slapped them back to reality in the finals with a quick sweep, making this the first tourney without an LJL rep since 2017. When looking at this roster, this team is loaded with talent and experience. Maple and Betty have been international mainstays for years, and Junjia has made a name for himself as one of the best minor region junglers. PSG is a patient team, unwilling to make plays of their own early, but absolutely deadly in the mid and late game, focusing on punishing their enemy mistakes and strong team fighting. While their weak early game means they have a tendency to bleed out by death of 1,000 cuts, PSG are still far and away the strongest minor region team here. T1 should realistically stomp them if they meet, but they should take care of business against Astral, and FlyQuest should be on upset alert. This is a team that was one game away from advancing over a Western team at Worlds only 6 months ago. Underestimate PSG at your own peril. Coming into 2024 off their impressive Worlds run, GAM Esports had a ton of momentum to build off of. Making it out of play-ins, a VCS team outplacing the PCS, beating Team Liquid, even with a lot of changes and bringing in Cerberus as bot laners and snagging blazes from Saigon Buffalo, it seemed like there was little that could knock the wind out of GAM Esports' sails. What could go wrong? Oh, nothing major, only the single biggest match-fixing scandal in League Esports history. The investigation swept the VCS by storm as 32 people were placed under indefinite suspension. And it wasn't just random scrubs either. VCS legends like Glory, BeanJ, and Froggy were caught up in this. With the final week of the regular season cancelled, there were doubts as to whether there was even going to be a VCS rep at MSI. But, as they say, the show must go on. Well, all 8 teams were hit, GAM was one of the least effective teams, only having 2 players suspended. In a reduced playoffs that had teams scrambling for players to field, that gave us wacky scenarios like players coming right out of solo queue, or a former legendary jungler, now owner of Team Vikings SOFM, subbing in. As a support, GAM stood tall amongst the smoldering wreck that the VCS had turned into with a strong lower bracket run. To be fair to them this tournament, they have proven talent. Kiaya is back from last year, and Levi is one of the best players to ever come out of Vietnam. They're still hyper-aggressive and always willing to fight. Their playstyle is very much the same old GAM we know and love. But at the end of the day, they're playing with 2 emergency substitutes. Emo is only 18 years old, and Easy Love was taken from Rainbow Warriors, a team that went 0-20 for this split. If these were normal circumstances, I'd say they'd comfortably beat Loud and may be able to hang with Fnatic. But as is, an upper bracket upset is a hard sell, and I can easily see them getting bounced out by Loud in round 1. GAM will have to dig deep if they want to return the VCS to glory. Loud are back for their 4th straight international event as the CBLOL representatives, and their story this year hits many of the same beats as previous years. 4 out of 5 members are back from 2023, and they are still a very aggressive and volatile team, unafraid to take coin flip fights and make plays. Robo and Tin Owens led the charge in a 12-6 season as Loud stormed through Red Canids in the first round of playoffs before getting the better of Pain Gaming twice to win their 4th title. While Loud were one-star courses to make major upsets over teams and play-ins, this year, Loud has finally lost some of their luster. Their road here wasn't smooth, as Pain pushed them to 5 games in the finals, But more importantly, I just have severe doubts Loud can break through their ceiling. Robo and especially Croc have had some very underwhelming international performances, and I can't help but expect more of the same here. But my biggest reason for doubt is the bot lane. Support is the only position Loud made a change in, and Redbird is significantly worse than their previous support Seos. It's hard to really be as optimistic as I once was about them. Loud has always been a team that can beat or lose to anyone, within reason, and they should feast on a weakened Gam, but they also could just drop the ball against them, and an upset against Fnatic and especially top is a very hard sell. At the very least, they should be an entertaining team to watch with explosive games. For better or worse. If you've never heard the name LoL Esports before, you might be surprised to hear that this international appearance has been a long time coming. Entering the LLA in 2021, Astral made the finals in 4 out of their 6 splits, usually with an excellent regular season as well. They lost all of them, 3 of them in 5-game heartbreakers. Running back 3 out of 5 members while adding 2-time international representatives Cody in the mid lane and Ackerman in support, Astral finally got over the hump with an 11-1 regular season and a strong showing in the playoffs. As for what to expect at this tournament, Astral is a team that can snowball hard, but has trouble actually getting that lead to do so. Their reverse sweep of R7 in the semis and their sweep in the finals rematch showcase that when this team wins, they win hard. However, their early macro and decision-making can leave a lot to be desired. Despite this being the best LLA team we've seen in a good while, I don't have too much confidence in them. Obviously the T1 opening match is a wash, but I can't see them snowballing hard against FlyQuest, and the other minor region team is the strongest of the 4. They might match well stylistically into PSG's more passive nature. If they were in a bracket with Loud or Gam, maybe they'd take a series, but unless everything breaks right, it's hard to imagine Astral as anything higher than a 1-2 first round exit.